You raped Stacey Stites.
No, I didn't.
Did you murder Stacey Stites?
No, I didn't.
Were you present when it happened?
Absolutely not.
That was Dr. Phil, who's with us right now, celebrating his 18th season of the Dr. Phil Show.
Wow.
You know, in the community, there's been a lot of uproar about the inmate Rodney Reed, who that we just played a clip from. We've seen everyone from Rihanna to T.I. Repost petitions to save Rodney Reed from the from death row. You know, a lot of people are speaking out based on the information that's come out about this case. You had a chance to sit and talk with him.
I did, and I was contacted by the Innocence Project because nobody knew about this case. It was so old. It was 22 and a half years this man's been sitting on death row. 22 and a half years since like 1998. It's crazy. And they contacted me and said, this is gone stale. It's not on anybody's radar. Nobody's talking about it. We've lost all momentum, and we need you to jack this up and put it to the forefront of the narrative in America. Will you help us? And I said, I can't tell you what I'll say until I study the case. They said, will you go to death row and talk to him? I said, I will. And you just heard the first few seconds I sat down with him. And, you know, I've spent a lot of my career in deception detection. And I sat down with him from that mindset. I set every trap for him that I know in terms of lie behaviors. And I walked away from there. It's not even a close call.
You believe
this man is telling the truth.
Wow.
And then I put together with the Innocence Project a very complex and layered show with scientific and medical experts that we brought in to re-examine and put together all the evidence. The Innocence Project had pulled together these experts. We brought them all in, and I interviewed them, and 1, 2, 3, 4 scientific experts have independently concluded it is impossible that he committed this crime.
Impossible.
Impossible, and I'll tell you why. Because they said he killed her at 3 a.m. in the morning. And based on the deterioration of her body, there is no way she died at 3 a.m. She had to have been killed like 10 hours earlier. And 10 hours earlier, he wasn't anywhere near her. She was with somebody else who says they were with her at that time. He did not kill this woman. And he's sitting on death row, and I said 41 days in that clip. It's now 13.
It's 13 days.
13 days.
Before.
His last motion for stay of execution was just denied, and it was denied without opinion, and that's a good thing.
Okay.
Let me tell you why it's a good thing. Because that moves it on to the Supreme Court so they can either reverse this and send it back, or it can go to the governor. And I'm talking to the governor's office every day.
Have you spoken with the governor?
Not yet, and I don't want to talk to him yet.
Okay.
He can't do anything till the Supreme Court does what it does. See, there's a sequence in these things. And the Supreme Court has to rule. And the Supreme Court will reverse this, set him free, order a new trial or whatever. The governor can't intervene until the Supreme Court does what it does.
Okay.
Once the judicial process has run its course, then it's appropriate for the governor to step in and give clemency or whatever he might choose to do. And Governor Abbott, former judge, is a smart guy. He's a good guy. He's a fair guy. And I don't believe that he will let this go forward until he really studies this, and I believe that he and I will talk before this execution goes forward.
Okay, Dr. Phil, thank you for that insight. Who was the person that was with the victim 10 hours prior?
She was engaged to a police officer, and this police officer was a dirty cop. And right after he was convicted, this police officer was arrested indicted and convicted for kidnap and rape and did 10 years in prison for crimes very much like ended this girl's life.
Yeah.
So Rodney has never been convicted of any crime of this nature, and the person that says he was with her when the experts say she would have died, in fact, spent 10 years in prison for kidnap and rape.
For a similar crime.
And the truck that she was driving to work, that he supposedly somehow stopped on the highway and murdered her in, was this cop's truck, and they did not process the truck. They gave it back to him. He had it detailed the next morning and sold it.
Isn't that obvious?
You would think so.
Right?
You would think so.
It's a cover-up.
He was convicted by an all-white jury for killing a white girl in South Texas 22 years ago. And I'm sorry, I just think that the standard for taking a man's life in America should be very, very high.
Should be, yeah.
And, when you say beyond a reasonable doubt, stop and think about what that really means. That means that 12 people should go into a room, and the evidence should be so clear that there is nothing about which 12 reasonable people could differ. It could be so clear that is there anything here that could debate? No, that's open and shut. Anything here? No, that's open and shut. Anything here? No, that's open and shut. Well, okay, we've got 4 experts saying he could not have possibly done it. Would that put a little doubt in your mind? I think it would.
Yeah.
Her fiance, who says he was with her at the time they say she died, went to prison for violent crime against women. Would that put a little doubt in your mind? Yeah, I think it would.
Yeah.
I can give you a list of 20 things that all add up to very strong reasonable doubt. You don't take someone's life with that kind of doubt.
So how do you assess? What do you think is going on?
Well, I think that at the time, he didn't have a full and fair hearing. I don't think this man has ever had due process. He had a public defender who, by the way, from everything I can tell, was a very competent public defender. But they are terribly overwhelmed. She had 60 days at most to prepare for a capital murder trial. Now, I was a litigation consultant before I did the Dr. Phil show. That's how I met Oprah. I defended her in the Mad Cow case. I've done these cases, and you prepare for them for a year, 2 years. She didn't have time. She doesn't have investigators. She didn't have any of the things that he needs. And so there was an alibi witness that was with him at the time they said she was killed.
Yeah.
They didn't call the alibi witness because he was told, you don't need it. You don't need it. You don't need to call the alibi witness. They got nothing on you. And then he was convicted. And now our DNA technology now is so much better than it was then. They found his sperm heads, not even the whole body. They deteriorate across time. And if he had raped her 12 hours earlier, you would expect to find 2 or 3 million sperm. They found 3 sperm heads, which is what you would expect if you'd had sex 2 or 3 days earlier, which is what he said. But when they first went in, they said, do you know her? He said, no. And he lied and said no. They say, why do you lie? Well, why do you lie? Because you're black and they're asking you about a white girl being killed.
Yeah.
In South Texas,
you're engaged to a cop.
Do you know her?
Yeah. In Texas.
And they ask you, do you know her? Hell no, I don't know her.
Yeah.
Of course that's what he's going to say. But then he fessed up and said that he did. And now her friends are coming forward saying, yeah, she told us she was having an affair with Rodney Reed. They sat on that for 22 and a half years, but they've now come forward. I also broke news last Wednesday, an affidavit from Arthur Snow, who is in the Aryan Brotherhood in prison. I mean, these white supremacists. these are not the kind of people that are going to rally around an African American.
Not at all. They're not,
came forward.
They're not saying free Rodney.
No,
they're not.
No, he came forward and said that her fiance, that was in prison, had come to him asking for the Aryan Brotherhood to give him protection, and was bragging and said, "Yeah, my fiance cheated on me with this black dude, and I had to kill the bitch."
He didn't say black dude.
Had to kill the bitch.
Yeah, and that's the guy from the Aryan Nation. Now you got the white supremacists who are even coming to Rodney Reed's defense.
Yeah, saying that the guy said that he had to kill the bitch.
Yeah.
So, and of course, prison informants, you got to take them with a grain of salt. But this guy doesn't exactly have a motive to try and help Rodney.
Yeah, and even by him stepping for it, probably put himself in some kind of danger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just not. I'm not letting this go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing Facebook Live. I've done shows on it. I've done Facebook Live on it. I'm here talking about it. I told Rodney, I am going to work on this. I'm not going to forget you. I'm going to keep beating this drum.
Yeah.
I told him that, and I'm going to make good on that. I am not going to let him sit there and let this fall away. 13
Amen.
days and counting.
13 days. Let them know the same, that we're going to make sure we keep the awareness going as well here on this show.
Dr. Phil, we often talk so much about childhood trauma and what people deal with as kids and never resolve. Listening to you about Rodney, like, in all the best case scenario, he gets out and he gets to live what we try to say is a normal life. But isn't there some kind of trauma after being in prison for death row for 20-something years? How do you go back? How are men or people supposed to go back to normal life after being in death row, convicted of a crime they never committed? How do you fit back in this world?
Well, I'll tell you two things. This man is astoundingly philosophical. He is not angry. And you would think he would be. But he said, that's not going to help. He's the one that went and found DNA evidence. He studied his own case. And he's living in a 6x10. He doesn't get to see the sky. He doesn't get to see the sky, He's that contained. And think about it. Since he's gone, when he went in, there were no smartphones. Nobody had sent a text. There was no Facebook. There was no,
the internet was very minimal.
It really was almost non-existent. Mm-hmm. The world has changed so much since he went in, and he has spent 99% of his time alone. So when you come back out into the world, you've really got to stage yourself back in, or you're going to be overwhelmed.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be overwhelmed. So, I plan to help him with that.
Okay.
Because you've got to step into this, or you can really get overwhelmed and feel like you're so inadequate, then you get depressed.
Yes.
But if this works out the way it should, he should be a multimillionaire when this is over with, because somebody owes him for 22 and a half years of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and no matter how much they give him, it doesn't amount to that 22 years of his
would
life.
Would you sell 22 and a half years of your life
No.
for any amount of money?
No amount of money
Right.
would I do that. Dr. Phil is here. Thank you for giving us some insight on this case.
Yes.
Wow. I want to come back and open the phone lines as well. Okay, we got a few more minutes with Dr. Phil. You want to talk with him? 888-742-3345.
Weezy out of here.
Sway in the Morning, Shade 45. Dr. Phil is here. Also, the Dr. Phil podcast. Make sure you check that out. I've been a guest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That went really well.
Did it? All right, 888-742-3345. We have Derek from Middleton on the line. What up?
Hey.
Middletown, Derek.
Good morning, Sway. Good morning, Heather B. Good morning,
Good morning.
Dr. Phil.
How are you?
I just wanted to ask Dr. Phil if he had any advice or avenues I could take. I know Heather B. touched on single fathers. I'm happen to be one of them. I'm fighting through court right now to get custody. And it seems like a unwinning fight, no matter which avenue I take.
Well, I tell you what, everybody says that the family court is a woman's court, and that's not true. The best thing in the world you can do is ask the court to appoint an ad litem for your child. That means they're not owing to you or her. They look out for the best interests of the child. It's an ad litem. Ask that an ad litem be appointed, that you don't have to pay for that. The court pays for it. And then there are 10 criteria that are looked at to determine your fitness as a parent. And this is not a horse race. They don't look at this to see who's the best parent. They look to see, is the mother a fit parent? Is the father a fit parent? If neither are fit, then that will be the recommendation of the court, that neither parent have the child. If both are fit, they have absolutely no legal basis whatsoever to limit your access to that child. So if you get an ad litem, and you can find those 10 criteria on drphil.com, it will tell you what they are. And it's such things as, do you have a stable home to have this child in when they're in your custody? Mm-hmm. Do you have a stable emotional relationship with them? Do you make sure they get to school? Do you make sure they have proper medical care? There are 10 criteria, and that is your to-do list. If you can say yes to every one of those things, there is no way the court can keep you from having access to that child.
You heard it from Dr. Phil, Derek, okay?
And we learned a new word today, ad litem.
Ad litem. How you spell that, Dr. Phil?
ADLITUM.
T-U-M. L-I-T-U-M. Okay, litem. Okay, Garrett, you got a question?
Yes, sir. Yeah, man, Dr. Phil, being a white boy from Texas, myself, luckily was raised by a single father to be open-minded. But, man, you know, in the industry I work in now, which is construction-related, pipeline-related, traveling all over the country, we know with a certain, I don't want to say it in this generalization, but, you know, redneck, peckerwood type of environment. But, like, man, you see racism still so prevalent. That's one of the only good things I've seen Trump has put spotlight on, is to show, you know, what still exists out there. Do you think there's any chance for the ignorance and racism to ever even come to an end? Because it seems like they all stay in their pocket, they all stay in their community, and the ignorance breeds ignorance, and the process continues. You know, I just worry and get scared that, you know, is there an end to it? You know, it seems so hard to overcome.
Mm. Great question.
You know, I think the best thing in the world that can be done is to continue to talk about it, because I think a lot of the civil rights progress that has been made over the years is largely a media phenomenon. And if you want to get down into the real people, the real neighborhoods, the real communities, only when they start talking about it and really start communicating and sharing at a family level, worshiping together, you know, sharing all aspects of life and communicating and talking, that's where people learn that everybody's the same. And if you give it a voice and talk about it, that's where you're going to keep a bright light on it and get it over with. Because any kind of prejudice, bias, whether it's racism or nationalism, whatever, it's all born out of ignorance. And by ignorance, I mean lack of information. And the more you communicate, the less ignorance there is, and that's when that evaporates and goes away. And that happens on an individual basis.
Hey, Garrett, I appreciate you being open and honest about that, and I hope that information helps you, okay, Garrett? And people like you give us hope that it could get better, okay?
For sure. Well, thanks for the platform to get these kind of messages out, Sway. Love you guys.
Love you, too. You're a citizen, brother.
Sway in the morning. Thanks, Garrett.
Dr. Phil, I want to thank you for coming by again. You know, you're always welcome up here, man. You do so much healing for our audience and ourselves, and we crack a lot of great jokes against each other.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for talking about Rodney Reed.